Day 3 of the federal election campaign, and we know that the Liberals' main strategy is to smear Pierre Poilievre. Welcome to my channel, y'all. I hope you're having a great day. Well, we all know that Marx Carnage Carney can't be trusted. He will say whatever he needs to say and do whatever he needs to do in order to get elected. And he did that during the leadership race, and now he's doing it in the general election. And I want to bring up one point which makes this painfully clear. There was an article in the Glob and Mail. I believe it came out today, as a matter of fact. It may have come out yesterday, but I believe it came out today, where Pierre Poilievre was smeared. There's no other way to say it. He was smeared by the Glob and Mail. And of course, Jagmeet Singh from the NDP and Mark Carney are jumping all over this and pointing to this as saying that Pierre Poilievre is compromised. And no, he's not. Let's go to that article and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so here is the Globe and Mail report that I believe is basically a smear campaign against Pierre Poilievre. Let's go through this article and then we'll talk about it. Pierre Poilievre says he won leadership without Indian interference, defends not taking security clearance. So first off, let's talk about what they mean by security clearance. They're talking about what is going on with the NSICOP report, how Pierre Poilievre is refusing to get his security clearance. That's actually not what it is. He's refusing to get a security briefing. If anybody here thinks that Elizabeth May and Jagmeet Singh just showed up and in one afternoon got their security clearance, they're delusional. That's not the case. What they did was they signed a confidentiality agreement, basically under the Official Secrets Act. They got a security briefing. So it was a very limited security clearance. It was a security clearance just for that file, for nothing else. You hear Mark Carney going on and on and on about how Pierre refuses to get his security clearance. Pierre has had security clearances in the past. He probably has a security clearance now. Having an ongoing security clearance is completely different than signing a confidentiality agreement under the Official Secrets Act to see a specific document, to get a specific briefing. That's what Pierre Poilievre has not done, and he's not done that so that he can continue to question the government about their antics. They just want to shut him up. So I just want to make that clear. This goes, I don't know why, but this seems to go beyond a lot of people's comprehension. They think that it's his security clearance. No, I can almost guarantee that he already has at least a confidential security clearance. He probably even has a secret security clearance. He had to have had a secret security clearance when he was a minister in the Harper government. And when he's prime minister, he will have a top secret security clearance. So let's just get that out of the way. I would imagine his security clearance right now is a standard security clearance at the confidentiality level. Jagmeet Singh has no more security clearance than Pierre Poilievre. He probably has a lower one. Elizabeth May, even when she's sober, she doesn't have a security clearance. Basically, they've just agreed to a confidentiality agreement under the Official Secrets Act to see that one document. So let's be clear about that. All right, so getting back to this article, Pierre Poilievre says he soundly won the 2022 Conservative leadership without any help from India, as the leaders of the Liberals, NDP, and Bloc Québécois criticized him for refusing to obtain a national security clearance to get classified briefings on foreign interference. So that paragraph to me is a little bit goofy because they're talking about the fact that he won the leadership race fair and square, and then they go on to saying that he hasn't gotten the security clearance. Why they're bringing the two up in one paragraph, actually even in one sentence, is kind of telling that this article is going a certain direction. The Glob and Mail, citing a source with top secret security clearance, reported Tuesday that agents of India and their proxies were involved in raising money and organizing within the South Asian community for Mr. Poilievre during the Conservative leadership race as part of a larger effort to cozy up to politicians of all parties. Okay, so let's break this down. Okay. First off, we have a traitor within CSIS. We have a person who has top secret security clearance who has violated his oath, who has violated his security clearance, who has committed a crime and should go to jail as a result. Second, they say that he says that agents of India and their proxies were involved in raising money and organizing within the South Asian community for Mr. Poilievre during the Conservative leadership race as part of a larger effort to cozy up to politicians of all parties. So what he's saying there is they're doing this in all parties, not just the Conservative Party. They're doing this in order to garner favor with all parties. And when we go down further in this article, you'll find out that this individual who has violated his security clearance, who has broken the law to reveal this, he's saying that it actually had no effect on Pierre getting elected, and also that Pierre didn't have any information, any knowledge of this. So basically, these Indian agents are doing this in every party for all the candidates that they choose, that they want to suck up to and want to get favor from. But just because Pierre Poilievre has refused to sign that confidentiality agreement under the Official Secrets Act to see that one report so that he is not handcuffed, he's not tied, and basically gagged from talking about it, this guy is releasing this information to the Globe and Mail. It goes on to say that the Canadian Security Intelligence Service did not share this information with Mr. Poilievre because he did not have the necessary security clearance. Again, BS. I'm calling BS on that. Anybody with CSIS wants to reach out and discuss this with me and explain exactly what they're talking about here, I'm willing to take that conversation. So I'm calling BS here. I know what security clearances are, and I know what happened here. It is complete bull crap, because you don't even need to have a security clearance to be informed that somebody is targeting you. If you're the subject of a crime, you don't need a security clearance to get details of that crime. If I call up the RCMP and say, hey, somebody committed a crime on my property. They came on, they busted all the headlights of my car, broke the windows, stole some stuff out of my vehicle. I can get updates on that. I don't need a security clearance. I can get updates on that investigation. My neighbor can't. My neighbor can't get updates. Okay? I mean, this is the reality of what's going on here. If you're actually involved in something as a civilian, even without a security clearance, you do have access to a certain amount of information. He goes on to say that what I will not do is commit to the oath of secrecy that the Liberals want to impose on me. They don't want me to speak about these matters. So they bring me into a dark room and say, we're going to give you a little bit of breadcrumbs of intel, and then we'll tell you what you can't talk about. They tell you can't talk about this stuff anymore. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You're telling Pierre Poilievre that he's got to sign this confidentiality agreement, and then he can't talk about it. This is not a true security clearance. Mr. Poilievre quoted from the Globe article in which the source said CSIS did not have evidence that Mr. Poilievre or any of his inner circle knew about India's alleged interference operations. So what are they trying to do here? They're trying to smear Pierre Poilievre, but they're saying that he had no knowledge of what was going on, what these Indian agents were doing. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And then when we scroll down, Marx Carnage Carney is getting into it. Campaigning in Halifax, Liberal leader Mark Carney questioned the integrity of the Conservative leadership race, which Mr. Poilievre won with 68% of the vote. He said it was beyond baffling that Mr. Poilievre refuses to obtain a national security clearance, particularly in these times of global uncertainty. So again, they're talking about multiple things within one paragraph. And I think it's really rich also that Mark Carney is questioning the integrity of the Conservative leadership race when we've just went through a Liberal leadership race where they disqualified candidates for very suspicious reasons, where they made candidates raise ungodly amounts of money just to be able to participate. Then they kicked them out so that they can keep all that money. They had over 400,000 people registered to vote, but they only allowed 150,000 people to actually choose. And then Mark Carney won that leadership contest with, 95 or something like that percentage of the votes. So he's got the nerve to stand up and question the integrity of the Conservative leadership race of 4 years ago now. I think it was, maybe it was 3 years ago now. And yet his recent leadership win was highly, highly questionable. Come on now. This is gaslighting at its worst. It's not even really well done. I find it downright irresponsible that the leader of the opposition, day after day, month after month, year after year, refuses to obtain a security clearance. Again, that is crap. Mr. Carney said, at this point in our history, when we face the greatest threats that we have faced in generations, in most of our lifetimes, he has to answer to that. Mr. Carney, you're just full of crap. Now, to emphasize the bias of this particular article, let's go and read a little bit about how they believe that Pierre Poilievre has basically deflected questions and how he's actually questioning something that is going on at the present time. But obviously, they don't care about that. They want to focus in on something that happened in 2022, so 3 years ago. This is what the article brings up, because of course Pierre Poilievre is going to bring up something a little bit more relevant, a little bit more pertaining to what's going on today. Mr. Poilievre tried to deflect concerns about India's role in the 2022 leadership, saying reporters should be asking Mr. Carney about a visit last fall to China where he met the deputy governor of the People's Bank of China, that country's central bank, not long after Brookfield Asset Management, which Mr. Carney chaired until he resigned to run for the Liberal leadership, received a $276 million loan from the Bank of China for a Shanghai-based office tower. Why would he be collaborating with a hostile foreign regime that we have since learned executed 4 Canadians and took numerous Canadians hostage for a lengthy period of time? Mr. Poilievre said. He noted that Mr. Carney still holds stock and options in Brookfield, although they were put in a blind trust after he won the Liberal leadership on March the 9th. How do we know he will not act against our interests and in favor of his financial interests? Mr. Poilievre said. These are all very good points. How do we know he won't act in his own interests instead of Brookfield? He's been very dodgy on this subject. He's been trying to avoid it at all costs. And we're talking about Mark Carney now. So these are relevant. These are timely issues that Pierre Poilievre is bringing up. But the Globe and Mail, they want to just focus on something that happened 3 years ago that had no effect on the leadership race, the conservative leadership race, and that they know for certain Pierre Poilievre had no knowledge of. Marx Carney, he absolutely has knowledge of his trip to China, his discussions with the leader of the People's Bank of China. He has absolute knowledge of all of these more recent things that show bias. So this really shows a bias in the reporting here, in my opinion. Now, when we scroll down a little further, it says, in a statement to the Globe, CISA spokesman Lindsay Sloan said that the agency testified during the Hogue inquiry that there was no reason to believe impacted candidates would have been aware of alleged support from India during the 2022 Conservative leadership race. Ms. Sloan said the spy agency has provided a classified briefing to Ian Todd, Chief of Staff to Mr. Poilievre, about foreign interference, threat activities, and tactics, including allegations of interference in the leadership race. And finally, the severely compromised Justice Hogue has urged all federal party leaders to obtain national security clearances so they can view top secret intelligence that may affect members of their parties. Security clearances involves a rigorous process that includes background checks on family members, credit and criminal checks, and intrusive personal questionnaires such as whether they have ever used drugs. So this is very important. It goes back to what I was saying earlier about how Jagmeet Singh and Elizabeth May could not have received the security clearances they claim they have received in such a short period of time when they were given access to the NSICOP report. It's not a security clearance. It was a confidentiality agreement. So now that we know their main strategy is just to smear Pierre Poilievre, what else is happening today in reference to this election? Well, yet another MP, a Liberal MP who decided not to run when it looked like they were going to get wiped out, has now decided, because the polls are looking so great, that they're going to stay in the race. This is at least 3 so far, and probably more. But Sean Fraser, the disgraced housing minister and the disgraced former immigration minister, he decided he was going to retire, spend more time with his family. That was when it looked like they were going to get totally decimated. But now that they're up in the polls, guess who is saying they're coming out of retirement? They're changing their plans. They're going to throw their hat into the ring and run for another term. Yes, Sean Fraser is coming back. I think that this kind of just shows what their character is all about. You know, so many of them had decided initially they're not going to run, and then they were offered positions and the Liberal fortunes turned around, and now they're back in it. They're not in it for Canada. They're not in it to make a better world. They're just in it for themselves. And now that we're talking about how the polls have shifted, why don't we go and take a look at the polls? Here is the 338 Canada federal projection as of this date. It looks like they're going to be updating this page on a daily basis because, you know, we're in an election. The Liberals have now widened the gap, according to 338 Canada, to 41%, plus or minus 5%, to the Conservatives, 37%, plus or minus 4%, giving them a seat projection of 185 to the Conservative 126. Quite the change from just a few months ago, where that was just the opposite. Where we look now, and this is so disturbing if it's anywhere near the truth. On the map, we see that the North has turned Liberal light, including Nunavut. And BC, it says, has turned Liberal light. I don't know who the hell in BC is voting Liberal, but I suggest we pack their bags for them and send them to Ontario or Quebec or the East Coast because they're destroying our province. But, you know, that's just my opinion. Alberta is still Conservative, and so is Saskatchewan now, because they're the only two conservative provinces out there, and they're strong conservatives. Yeah, it means that we're in a lot of trouble. Manitoba is liberal light, it says here. Now, this actually kind of does show a little bit of bias because it shows liberal light on the map, but 7 and 7, so completely split between liberals and conservatives, but yet they choose to shade the map liberal light. Does that not show a bias or not? Of course, Ontario still shows as liberal light on the map. I would suggest that it's probably liberal strong if these polls are valid, because 78 seats to 40 seats, that's a pretty strong lead. Quebec, again, is liberal light. No need to beat that horse to death. New Brunswick, liberal strong. Nova Scotia, liberal strong. And now Nova Scotia is looking at not having any conservative seats. PEI, obviously liberal strong with all 4 of its seats, where they should really only have 1 seat there, according to their population. And Newfoundland, 7 seats, all of their seats liberal, so they are liberal strong as well. So let's now talk about the current seat allocation and what it should be per population. So going down through the provinces, Newfoundland has 7 seats. For a population, they should have 4 seats. So they're 3 seats overrepresented. Now, PEI is way overrepresented. They should have about 1.5 seats, but they have 4 seats. But you really can't allocate half a seat. So if you just add PEI and New Brunswick together, they should have, they currently have 14 seats among them, but they should only have 9 seats. So they're 5 seats overrepresented. Nova Scotia should have, has 11 seats. They should only have 9 seats. They're 2 seats overrepresented. Quebec has 78 seats, but they should only have 71 seats. So that's 7 seats overrepresented. Ontario has 122 seats. They should have 136 seats. So they are actually underrepresented by 14 seats. Now, I don't know if these seats are in the GTA. I don't know if they're in the rural area. So, I don't know how many seats are where. So I can't tell you if they're liberal seats or more conservative seats or whatever, but they are underrepresented and they need 14 more seats. Manitoba has 14 seats. They should only have 11, though. They are 3 seats overrepresented. And the same with Saskatchewan. They have 14 seats, but they only deserve 11. They are 3 seats overrepresented. Alberta has 37 seats, but they should have around 43 seats. So that they are 6 seats underrepresented. They need 6 more seats. British Columbia, with 43 current seats, they should have 48 seats, which means that they are 5 seats underrepresented. And of course, the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut have 3 seats between them. They should only have 1 seat between them, so they are 2 seats overrepresented. They should lose 2 seats. So this kind of gives you an idea of where the country sits as far as seats goes, how they're overrepresented in some areas, underrepresented in other areas. Not exactly fair. You can see that the East Coast and Quebec really have a lot of say in who gets elected. And then when you add in the North, you have an extra 2 seats up there just thrown in for whatever purpose. I guess they decide they can't have less than 1 seat per territory. I don't know. I'm not sure that I agree with that, though. Maybe they should share a seat. Just like PEI, they shouldn't have 4 seats. Now, should they have less than 2 seats? Maybe they should have 2 seats, and maybe New Brunswick should only have, 8 seats. So that would, add a seat there. I don't know. Like there's lots of different ways you can do it, but it would be a lot better for Canada, for fairness sakes, if we just divided the seats up a little bit better. And I think you can see with the seat allocation that it is heavily skewed towards the Liberals, because in the Liberal parts of Canada, they do have more seats. No matter how you slice it, though, and this next election is going to be very important. Alberta is about at its wit's end. They're not going to put up with very much more abuse. And really, it does look as if the East Coast and to some extent the West Coast and Central Canada is, they just think totally different than Alberta. And since Alberta is where all the money comes from, it's kind of a little unfair, especially when you look at the fact that they are underrepresented in Parliament. But hey, that's just my opinion. I'd love to know what you think. Put your comments down below. And while you're at it, please like this video, share with your friends and on social media. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and hit that bell notification so you never miss another video. Also, please join me on Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. Pacific time on both YouTube and Rumble for my live stream, where you're invited to join in on the conversation. Finally, I do teach the Canadian Firearms Safety course, and this is a course you need to get your Canadian firearms license. I reside on Vancouver Island, so if you reside on Vancouver Island and you want to take a course from me, there are links in the show notes of this video to my website where you can sign up for one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.